Thank you. Ivan Raiklin is going to come to the stage now, share with us. So those that you don't know, the deep state marauder, Ivan Raiklin, who we always find in the Capitol and asking the tough questions of congressmen and senators and those that come to testify. I'm sure they fear the idea that they have to walk the halls and get questioned by Ivan. So, Ivan, if you'd come on up, say a few words here. We're looking forward to having you.
Okay, my message is going to be simple. Real quick, I'm going to introduce myself, but before I do so, I want to get the attention of the following individuals, and those people that are watching online, do everything you can so that the following individuals listen to this message. Number one, this is for the tech bros, the information that I'm about to put out. Elon Musk, Jason Calacanis, Peter Thiel, you name it. Okay, number two, those that are the leaders within our legislative branch. Number one, the Senate Pro Tem, Chuck Grassley. Number two, the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune. Number three, the Senate Rules Committee Chairman on the Senate side, Mitch McConnell. On the House side, Speaker Johnson, Barry Loudermilk, who chairs the subcommittee that also has oversight of what I'm about to explain, Article 1 branch of government's law enforcement arm, that did a lot of the weaponization. And lastly, the last category of people that need to hear this message are those that are going to be in the incoming administration that are going to address what I'm about to lay out that needs to be addressed. Some people call it accountability, some people call it justice, and some people call it retribution. The maximum lawful and just punishment for illegal behavior. Now you're going to hear a lot of these J6ers. Many of them already served their time. They're unlawfully, and the charges were just so much. I mean, we'll get into that. So the following individuals need to listen to that part, and I'm going to close with that part, which are the incoming Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the incoming Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the incoming FBI Director, Kash Patel. Notice I said FBI and I didn't say FBI, because that's where we're currently at, Chris Ray Epps, if you will. So the other folks are John Radcliffe, which is the incoming CIA Director. And I'll explain why that is, because I am going to lay out, for those that are going to listen in, the weaponization that started in 2020 that created the framework to then weaponize anybody and everybody that scrutinized the illegitimate actions of our federal government and in some instances our state officials that certify elections. So let's start. Back in 2020, I'm going to give you the historical arc real quick here, from 2020 to where we're standing to today. 2020, good old Anthony Fauci. And again, a lot of this stuff has been released and disclosed through Twitter files. Thank you, Elon Musk. But there's more to do. Number two, all the information that was disclosed over the last 2 years in this new, not new anymore, but the 118th Congress. So 2020, we had the Fauci-funded lab incident, right? Out in Wuhan. That then came back to haunt us by making sure that the basement dweller that wasn't able to campaign was able to face an opponent on par with him, which means that they had to shut everything down in America, violate constitutional norms and principles, change the way that elections were held in 2020, not in the 6 contested states, but in the 39 states that were the non-legislative actors in those states ran their elections contrary to the election law of those 39 states, rendering the election illegitimate, null and void. Many folks that ended up going to DC on January 6th knew at least some component of that in the collective. And so we went into January 6th where we saw that we had an illegitimate election, which has now been proven, and just more and more evidence continues to develop showcasing that. And on January 6th, you had what many call a Fedsurrection, some call a parliamentary coup d'etat. And the best way to describe that coup d'etat is in a video that's about to be played. You guys ready for it? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready for it as I kind of explain what this video you're about to see is. So on January 6th, while everyone focused on what was going on the outside of the Capitol, the events of January 6th unfolded as they did based on my research over the last 4 years, literally the last 4+ years, is because certain leaders within the legislative branch, working with certain actors within the executive branch, to go ahead and facilitate what you saw take place on January 6th. Some people call it an entrapment, a Fedsurrection, a parliamentary coup. And in essence, is at 1 o'clock, for example, today, we're about 3 hours out. What time is it? 2 hours and 11 minutes. We're going to go through the same process of certifying a president. But last time it happened, 4 years ago, the Speaker of the House was Nancy Pelosi. This is important. She controls and directs the Sergeant at Arms in the House, who is the senior law enforcement authority to decide whether or not to protect the Capitol or to not protect the Capitol, okay? On the Senate side, good old Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, was the one who directed the Senate Sergeant at Arms. So those two individuals in the collective, along with the architect of the Capitol, decide what the U.S. Capitol Police Chief can or cannot do. So when Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, whom, as late as yesterday, I've spoken with him many a time to kind of understand what happened on January 6th. And of all the leaders within the Capitol Police, his testimony is the only testimony that I've seen to be consistent over the last 4 years. And that is that he requested on 6 occasions, from January 3rd with the opening of the Congress to January 6th, additional support to provide defense of the Capitol, or at least a show of force and presence so that nothing would take place. Well, that was overridden by the House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, who, by the way, was the Sergeant at Arms for Paul Ryan, who sits on the board of Fox News still, note, as well as the Sergeant at Arms for John Boehner before that. Notably, those two individuals campaigned for Liz Cheney when she lost in her primary election. So these are just some relationships to consider. What I'm getting at, before getting in too much detailed rabbit hole on this, is that every single January 6th defendant, all 15, approaching 1,600 individuals, it is a result of the weaponization by the legislative branch leadership. Many of you, and rightfully so, have been fighting this fight thinking that this is where you're supposed to fight it, in the executive branch, in the DOJ. That is one line of effort. Also in the courts, that is one line of effort. But the sequence of events is, it started in the Capitol when Nancy Pelosi allowed the breach to take place at a minimum, or deliberately ensured that the breach took place so that there would be an insurrection narrative as the modus or the precursor to try to guarantee that America First and Trump would not return back to office. We've noticed over the last 4 years that has miserably failed. And what you said is exactly, Trennis, President Trump would not be entering office. I know a lot of people will lay claim to his victory, but I would have to say that those individuals that showed up on January 6th were the early critical thinkers that knew exactly what was going on, and us, educated the rest of the nation so that Elon Musk could be like, let me buy Twitter. Let me look under the rug. Let me look under the table. Oh, wow. It's the very same general counsel of the FBI that later becomes the Twitter 1.0 deputy general counsel that coordinated the entire censorship regime on behalf of the federal government. to include the COVID pandemic, to include the censorship related to the illegal election, and so on and so forth. So, you got the video? We're having great technical successes today. You ready?
We don't have the video.
I texted it to you. That was the first video that I sent.
Oh, is this the video that you sent?
Please play that video, because that is the best summation in the shortest period of time that showcases what many people missed. Nancy Pelosi on the House floor on January 6th, just before the breach occurred, laid it out. She said that we will not have a quorum because even though 3 days prior on January 3rd, everyone was in the House voting for Nancy Pelosi to be the Speaker, but 3 days later, the CCP-19 virus, all of us, excuse me, for the tech bros, COVID-19 virus, all of a sudden just went out of control, and Nancy Pelosi, at the advice of the sergeants at arms and the attending physician, told the entire House and Senate that guess what, folks? Only 11 of you can be here on the floor. 11 Democrats, 11 Republicans from the House, 11 Democrats, 11 Republicans in the Senate. And oh, by the way, Kevin McCarthy wanted to have half of those individuals that were to object to advocate to not to object. Please play that. All right, so,
While you're waiting, why don't you announce?
all right, so let me just kind of close out here real quick. It's an important video because it's off of C-SPAN. You can see her statement, and then later on you see that the attending physician is testifying before the oversight subcommittee in the House, before Barry Loudermilk's committee, and he's explaining that he was the one. Bottom line is the individuals that were involved in facilitating the breach of the Capitol, Pelosi, Paul Irving, etc., then later had to use levers of their power to cover that up. And how did they do that? They did it in three individuals. Here you go.
So when voting was taking place later, just a few days later, we were told we had to go up in the gallery. We couldn't stay on the floor in order to make objections if we wanted to make an objection to a parliamentary procedure. I was told this because of the COVID regulations. And yet, on the day of the swearing in of the speaker and the vote on the speaker, none of that pertained. Isn't that correct?
I don't know precisely that answer, sir.
Let us remind that each side, House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, each have 11 members allowed to be present on the floor. Others may be in the gallery. This is at the guidance of the attending physician. This is at the guidance of the attending physician, of the attending physician, of the attending physician.
The answer is yes, but I understand you may not know it. I have to yield back because my
That is the attending physician right there testifying.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
This is at the guidance of the attending physician and the sergeants at arms, and the sergeants at arms, and the sergeants at arms. Let's go. Let's just start. Okay.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress, for what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Point of order, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Vice President. In order to follow with the Speaker's instructions that only a limited number of people be on the floor, may I ask how one would make an objection or make a parliamentary inquiry in the future if you're not on the floor but in the gallery?
Under Section 18 of Title III of the United States Code, debate is not permitted in the joint session. Gentleman's recognized.
I'm not attempting to debate. I'm trying to find out how a parliamentary inquiry or a parliamentary point of order would be made in following with the Speaker's request that most of us not be on the floor. How do you make one of those points of order when you don't know what's going to happen later?
Respectfully, the gentleman's parliamentary inquiry constitutes debate, which is not permitted in the joint session under Section 18 of Title III, United States Code.
I don't know precisely that answer.
This is at the guidance of the attending physician.
I don't know precisely that answer.
All right, so they conducted the coup right there through parliamentary procedure. And then when Ted Cruz and Paul Gosar stood up to object to Arizona, that's when I believe the order to facilitate the breach of the Capitol took place. And then a lot of other people can talk about the tactical aspects of it externally. I can give you as much detail as you need as far as how the cover-up continued, and that was done through the J6 cover-up committee. The individuals that need to be investigated by Bondi, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, are David Buckley, the staff director of the J6 committee, who was one of the 51 spies who lied, and was the former inspector general for John Brennan. So that's for you, John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard. Number 2, Jamie Raskin, who was the one that led the effort in the impeachment hoax 2 procession. And then number 3, it would have to be the general counsel of the United States Capitol Police, Tad DeBias. His signature, I can almost guarantee you, is the one that's on the bottom of every single correspondence to weaponize against every single January 6th defendant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. It's always a pleasure. Listen, folks, if you want knowledge, if you really want to understand the inner workings of what happened at the Capitol that day, from the legislative perspective, there is probably no greater resource than Ivan Raiklin. So that's why we had him here today. Thank you, Ivan, Deep State Marauder, Raiklin. All right, so I think